Hey there, everybody. It's Snackbox coming to you from a beautiful day down here in Basement Studio. I'm really excited to be coming to you today to talk to you about the Collegiate Loop. That's right, those beautiful 160 miles winding their way around the Collegiate Mountains in the center of Colorado's Rocky Mountains. This is a really incredible hike. It is the hike that made me fall in love with the Colorado Trail, and I am hoping that I can help you fall in love with it as well while giving you all the best tips and tricks for having a great adventure when you take off on your own thru hike of the Collegiate Loop of the Colorado Trail. We're going to talk about everything from resupply to training to making sure that you choose the right place to start your trip. We've basically got a lot to cover and not a lot of time. Let's get to it, everybody. So if you've made the terrific choice to do the Collegiate Loop and hike the 160 miles that walk you around the Collegiate Mountains in the center of Colorado, you have made a great choice. With that in mind, what we want to do is we want to talk about some of the ways you can make good use of your time and make sure that you get all the way around that loop, because for most people who choose to do the Collegiate Loop, often this is because of time constraints. A lot of people like me choose to do it because you only have a week or two to do a big hike, and so you want something that's feasible and realistic in that time frame, so you don't want to go out and have something keep you from being able to finish. What this means is that you need to make sure you're as prepared as possible so that you can go out there, have a great time, and have as few worries as possible as you're seeing some of the most beautiful country this country has to offer. So my first big tip here is that you don't want to underestimate the climbs. A lot of people think, especially when you're thinking about the East versus the West, a lot of people start thinking, well, you know what, if I'm just going out there for 160 miles, I don't have to do a lot of training. And if I start in the East, it's not all that hard, so I'll be able to finish it, no big deal. Truth be told, the Collegiate East holds what I consider to be 3 of the hardest climbs on the entire Colorado Trail. Those are the first 3 climbs you're going to hit when you leave Twin Lakes. And so they are really, really gnarly climbs. They're super steep, a little bit gravelly as well, so your footing is going to be a little bit shaky, a little unstable, and it's going to be really hot there depending on the time of year that you go. So my big recommendation is that you start training early and that you get yourself ready to go for this hike, and you spend that time really prepping and getting as physically ready and dialing in your gear as humanly possible so you can have a great trip. Don't underestimate those climbs. Just because the trip itself is distance-wise shorter doesn't mean the climbs aren't really, really hard. It will be a challenge. The good news is, if you're watching this video right now, you have plenty of time to get yourself ready to go for that climb or for all of those climbs, and so you are going to be able to get some of that training in. For me personally, I'm not an athlete, but what I like to do is I start on the treadmill, I put it on 3 miles an hour with as much incline as I can handle, and then I walk on that for 30 minutes. And then the next time I get on the treadmill, hopefully the next day, I turn it up to 35 minutes, and then the next time 40 minutes, and then 45. And I just keep adding time to my 3 mile an hour full incline walk until I get up to 60 minutes. And then I go back down to 30 minutes and I crank it up to 3.1 miles an hour and start the cycle over again. If you start doing that, then your legs are going to be ready for climbing and hiking, and you're going to be in great shape. Other thing that I would really recommend, and I've seen this play out a number of different times, is if you are a person who goes to the gym and you focus on strength training, I'm going to encourage you to really build in some cardio. And likewise, if you're a person like me who likes to go out and do a lot of cardio, then when you go to the gym, I'm going to encourage you to add in some strength training. You want to be as well-rounded as possible when you get out there to this trip, and it's going to be super possible for you to be ready to go if you start right now. You don't want to go out there without being ready physically to climb these mountains, because if you have some type of overuse injury, it will show itself really early. And if you can't afford a couple of days to rest and heal up so that you can get back on the trail, this could end up messing up your whole hike. Be of the mindset that you want to be ready, so much so that the one thing you're doing out there is enjoying beautiful landscapes, and you're not worrying about whether or not that twitch you feel in your knee is going to turn into something worse. That starts today with some really great training. Now, this one is going to be a little bit counterintuitive to those of you who are going out there for, say, a week-long hike, or maybe you're really an athlete and you know what you're doing. But I'm going to recommend for all of you that you resupply once, ideally twice along the trail. There are a couple of different places that make a lot of sense to do so, including the Mount Princeton Hot Springs, Twin Lakes General Store, and then also the Monarch RV Park and Campground, which is about a mile off the trail. All 3 of these different options will afford you the opportunity to hop off trail, resupply your gear, and then get back on trail really quickly. It's not really hard to do. It's going to be really great. But the big thing here is that in my years of hiking, what I've learned is that I can shrink down and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on great gear like really light quilts and maybe a really nice tent that's super light. I can spend all my money on that and it's not going to get me nearly as far as a resupply would by way of paring down my gear. I could spend hundreds of dollars trying to take 10 pounds out of my backpack weight, or I could resupply. And if we consider that the average person's food resupply is about 2 pounds per day, just resupplying 2 or 3 times will make sure that I only have to carry about 6 to 7 pounds of food in between each stretch, so that I have my pack as light as possible and I don't have to spend a lot of money on other gear. This is hopefully really helpful for those of you who are maybe going out for one hike a summer and you don't want to spend $400 on a quilt that's going to shrink your pack weight by 2 pounds, because you know that you're only going to go out for a week, a summer or two. So resupplying often throughout this hike is going to really help you to shrink that weight without spending a ton of money on new gear that you're only going to use a couple of different times. This also brings me to my next tip, which is that if you plan those resupplies really carefully, then you can show up at these different areas and have a meal at the different places, like the Mount Princeton Hot Springs. The Monarch gift shop has a little snack bar. The Monarch gift shop doesn't always take resupplies, so you need to call before you do that. But the good news is, if you go there, even when you pass by, you're going to go right through the parking lot. You're probably going to stop in anyway and recharge your cell phone or do something similar, maybe use their bathrooms. So if you go in there and get yourself a meal and you plan on doing so, that's one fewer meal you have to carry in your bag. I absolutely recommend trying to plan your visits there. It's also worth knowing that this is super possible at Twin Lakes, although the reason it's not on my list here, because in Twin Lakes, they basically only have a couple of little food trucks, so you don't necessarily want to count on them to be open, but you can go into the Twin Lakes General Store and get food in a pinch. So you could plan on it, but just be aware of this, that these are a lot of different places where you can shrink your pack weight by just planning to have a meal in each of these different stops along the way. Definitely recommend it. And they've all been great places for hikers in the past, so they're good places to support with our dollars as we go around the Collegiate Loop. Now, here's the thing. We just talked about Twin Lakes, and here's the deal for most of you out there. A lot of people start thinking of this trip and they immediately gravitate toward Twin Lakes as the natural, intuitive starting point for the trail. And that makes a lot of sense. Twin Lakes is a great spot. There is a parking lot there that you can park at Interlaken Trailhead. It is super possible, but a couple of things to know is that that trailhead tends to get full really quickly. It's down a little bit of a dirt road, and it's also not the ideal place to start the hike, even if it were really accessible with lots of different parking spots. What I think personally is the best place to start a Colorado Trail Collegiate Loop thru hike is in Avalanche. Avalanche is on Highway 306 just outside of Buena Vista, and there's another side trip you can take straight from there and go to Silver Creek. And let's talk about the advantages of each of them. The advantage of starting at Avalanche is it's on a completely paved road. If you're taking a car that you don't really want on a dirt road or to park somewhere that's not super accessible, then Avalanche is perfect because it's all paved all the way up there. There is a big parking lot. You're not really going to have trouble getting a parking spot there, and you'll be able to leave it there, have it ready to go when you come back. The reason I mentioned Silver Creek is because Avalanche is on the end of this sort of edge of Mount Yale, and it's one of the toughest climbs getting up the side from Silver Creek down to Avalanche. So if at all possible, start at Silver Creek. There is a parking lot there that you can park at as well. It's down a dirt road, so that's not quite ideal, but there is a bathroom there, which is really nice. And you can climb over the bridge, climb up over that ridge at Mount Yale, get one of the harder climbs out of the way right away while your feet are still fresh and good to go, and then you can take off from there. Personally, I started at Avalanche and I loved it because, and this is the big takeaway, the Avalanche Trailhead gives you the most time at lower elevations before putting you up way high where that altitude can be an issue. So if you start at Avalanche, you're going to spend the most time at lower elevations before you get up to high elevation where that oxygen is going to be an issue. It'll basically not put you above tree line until you get to Marshall Pass, and that's when you basically are finishing up the east on that side. So you'll have about 3 or 4 days to acclimate. It's a really great way to start. I personally recommend it. The other bonus here is that for those of you who are still wondering how you're even going to get out to the Collegiate Loop this summer, you're trying to figure out whether or not you're going to drive or fly, this is the big sell here, is that you can basically get to the Avalanche Creek Trailhead. Not Avalanche Creek, that's in Glacier National Park. You can get to the Avalanche Trailhead with public transit. Basically, you can take the Mustang out of Denver. So you can go fly into Denver, hop on the Mustang, that'll get you to Buena Vista, and then you're 9.5 miles from the trailhead. In which case, if you feel comfortable, you can hitch it. If you don't feel comfortable, it would be very easy for you to coordinate a ride from the shuttlers list provided by the Colorado Trail Foundation. So a lot of different ways to get there. And if you did have to pay for a shuttler and the Mustang, I believe you could probably do the full trip from Denver to the trailhead and back for about $100, which is not bad. And it's a lot less expensive than if you get to Denver, rent a car just to pay for it to sit in a parking lot for the 10 to 12 days you're going to be hiking the Collegiate Loop. So I definitely recommend Avalanche, especially for those of you who are trying to figure out how to even get to the trailhead. It's a really good option for you. So that brings us here to another point. When you get to Twin Lakes, so here's the deal. If you are hiking clockwise, when you get to Twin Lakes, you are about a day and a half away from the Clear Creek Reservoir. Say that 3 times fast. Clear Creek Reservoir, Clear Creek Reservoir, Clear Creek Reservoir, Clear Creek Reservoir. So the Clear Creek Reservoir requires you to have a fishing license, even if you don't have a fishing pole or any intention of fishing. But you need to have a fishing license just to be in that area. They're only about $10 to $15 for a one-day pass. And if you pick it up at the Twin Lakes General Store, then you are in great shape then to make sure that you are legal going through that area. And if you've been following my tips for the first part of the video, you'll know that this is also a place where you can likely grab a meal, you can grab a resupply box and anything else that you need. And so stopping in at Twin Lakes General Store to pick up your fishing license will be a great idea. And you just go in and say, hey, listen, I'm planning on passing through Clear Creek in a couple of days. Can I get a fishing license for a day and a half out? And they will absolutely set it up, make sure that you're good to go there. And it will help you avoid any of those problems. Like if you try to book it early in time and then you get stuck in the Collegiate West and you end up having to wait out a couple of storms, and next thing you know, you've got a fishing license for a day before you're going to arrive. Even better, what if your trail legs come in early and you end up really crushing miles through the Collegiate West and you find out that you arrive at Clear Creek a day early? You don't really want to camp before the Clear Creek Reservoir area. It's not a lot of great camping before it. So making sure that you have that fishing license at the Twin Lakes General Store will make sure that you have the most freedom to choose when you go through the Clear Creek Reservoir area and do so legally. It's a really great way to go. And again, here's the thing. It's not ideal that they're going to give us a ticket if we pass through without the license, but ultimately we want to be good stewards of the trail. We want to make sure that we're good ambassadors for the trail so that we're welcome for years and years to come through that area. And so I know it's a bummer, but I do recommend that people pick up those fishing licenses and make sure they're legal going through there. Speaking of leaving that area, when you leave the Twin Lakes General Store and you start hiking, you're going to come across a lot more of the trails that are the side trips up the 14ers. The Collegiate East has a lot more of those side trails up the 14ers. And so I do recommend hiking some of those 14ers if you are physically able and interested. But when you're making your plans, remember, it's not just the 4 or 5 hours it's going to take you to take the side trip up the trail from the Colorado Trail and back. You're going to need to factor in things like stopping early for the night so that you can set up at the base of some of those trails to make your way up the 14er first thing in the morning. For example, if you show up at the Mount Massive trailhead and it's about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning, you don't need to go up the mountain at that point because that puts you right on top of the mountain when the storms might be pushing through, and that is super dangerous, very not recommended. So instead, what you may end up doing if you really want to hike that mountain is you might end up stopping at noon for the day and waiting out half a day so that you can hike it the next morning. So when you're making those plans, just remember that it's not just the time that you're going to be physically climbing the mountain. You also need to factor in the idea that the timing at the base of the mountain will be really important for making your way up and down those mountains. But I do recommend it. I think there's some really beautiful hikes out there, and I loved Mount Harvard. I did that one years ago and it was just incredible. It's very challenging, very taxing, even compared to the Collegiate Loop. I think if you feel safe doing it and you feel comfortable and confident that you can make it up and down, I say go for it. I think it would be a really great side trip for you. And if you have a lot of time, say you're physically capable, you've got 2 weeks, you can do the Collegiate Loop in a matter of 7 or 8 days. Most people, if you're really physically capable. So if you have 2 weeks, take a couple of side trips and go up a 14er or two. It can be really great and really add to those memories as you're making your way around the Collegiate Loop. Now, the last piece of advice that I have, this one is a little bit less obvious, but when you're hiking the Collegiate East, if you're going clockwise, you're going to get to the South Fooses Creek at the very end of the Collegiate East, and you're going to start climbing and climbing. It's a gentle, sort of slow, steady climb up the Fooses Creek to the very end. Then you're going to have a very steep final 100 yards or so, and then you're going to get up to Monarch Pass, which is incredible. absolutely stunning. And for many of you, what you're going to do is you're going to hang a right and you're going to start doing the Collegiate West. That makes a lot of sense. You stay on the loop if you're doing the loop. But if you get to Monarch Pass and it is about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, then you basically are committing yourself to about an 8 or 9 mile walk to the nearest campsite, not really any water nearby down that route. And the next real stop is going to be the Monarch gift shop. And you're going to have this huge climb that follows going into the Monarch ski resort. And you basically will commit to making your way all the way through the ski resort that day. Don't necessarily recommend it. So my personal recommendation is when you get down there to Monarch Pass, consider going past, staying on the Colorado Trail, leaving the loop, but staying on the Colorado Trail, going south just 1.5 miles, 2 miles, and you're going to get to the Green Creek Shelter. And the Green Creek Shelter is this nice flat area in the trees. So you're going to get back below tree line, nice and flat. There is a water source just before it. It's a little bit down the side trail, but you can get some water. You'll be starting the Collegiate West early in the morning when you can get some of the most spectacular views of the Colorado Trail early in the morning. You'll feel really safe because the storms won't be coming in at that point, most likely. It is just incredible. And then you will get to the Monarch Pass gift shop in time for an early breakfast. If you leave early, maybe you'll get there later in the day and have lunch. Whatever it is a really good option to take a little bit of a side trail. And it's worth knowing that the Green Creek Shelter is not necessarily great for camping inside it. So I would still plan on setting up my tent, but it is just beautiful, that area. It's not a really hard walk from there. It's really more of a walk than a hike at that point because there's not a lot of elevation change on that segment when you go south of Monarch Pass, and you'll be able to make sure that you have plenty of water and resources to make that last push. So basically taking a little bit of a side trip, you can set up near that shelter, set up in the trees. It'll be really great. There are a lot of deer in the area. You might get some great wildlife shots, and then you can start that hike, starting the Collegiate West bright and early, chipper in the morning, well rested and ready to go, ready to tackle what I consider some of the most beautiful stretches of the Colorado Trail, leaving the Monarch Pass and heading north on the Collegiate West. I think it's just incredible. I think you're going to love it. So I hope this has been useful to you. If you have any questions about the Collegiate Loop or the Colorado Trail in general, feel free to leave those below, or feel free to hit me up at Instagram at Backcountry Champion. Send me a message, say, hey, Snackbox, I've got some questions. I'm going to go out and do the loop. Let me know what your questions are. I'll do my best to answer them truthfully or make up something that sounds truthful. Happy to answer those. And if you do find me on Instagram, send me a message, say, hey, Snackbox, hit me up with one of those outside comfort zone stickers. I will get the new design out in the mail to you. So even if you had my old design, let me know and I will send you an updated version. You can put it on your water bottle, take it on that great trip of the Collegiate Loop. Let me know how it goes. Really grateful for all of you. Hope you're doing well out there. I think that about covers it. Have a great hike this summer, everybody. The Snackbox out.